The other thing that's going on concurrent with our search is what we describe in our rules and policies as an institutional review. And some of you in this room, I know, have already been contacted by that review team and some of our board members. When we have an opening on a campus, we think it's very important that we get an assessment of the state of the state, if you will. We want to find out the strengths, the opportunities, the potential weaknesses or weaknesses that might exist, and any opportunities that are there for the university. So our institutional review process is oriented to that. We usually engage and have, in this case, 3 out-of-state consultants to conduct that review. They will interview a myriad of people. They will be on the campus to conduct some interviews, and that will become the institutional review team report, which becomes a part of the committee's review materials, and it also is available to the semifinalists that we identify for interviews here on our campus. The other thing that we hope that institutional review does, and I think it has played this role in many of our past selections of presidents, it gives the person selected as president not necessarily a strategic plan. It's not designed for that purpose, but it really enables that new person to have the beginnings of a strategic plan and a blueprint for the campus. And we hope and we believe that this process is going to be just as good of opportunity for UNO and the new president when selected. That team consists of Dr. Gary Richard, who's chairing it. He's the former Executive Vice Chancellor and Chief Academic Officer for the California State University System. Mr. Bob Lovett, who is a former Vice President for Finance and Operations at Lamar University, and Dr. Rodney Smith. Dr. Smith is the Chief Administrative and University Planning Officer for Hampton University. Because UNO is new to us, new in the sense of being part of our system, when we would do this on our other campuses, we would be dealing with people that we already knew, and we'd be dealing with people that knew us and board procedures, et cetera, and Board of Regents procedures. Because we felt like there needed to be a little bit of a link between an out-of-state group and UNO and us, this time we have engaged the services of an in-state person to begin some preliminary work for the institutional review team. That gentleman is Dr. Steve Landry. Dr. Landry is the former provost and vice president for academic affairs at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. And prior to that, he was the vice president for research at that university, along with many other assignments. And he's already been on the ground here working with administration and others to help begin this transition to make that institutional review team report even more meaningful than it might normally be. The review team will be visiting the campus of UNO on September the 26th through September the 29th to conduct interviews in addition to the ones that they will have already done by phone and conference calls. There will also be, during that process, a public input session into the institutional review process. I hope that you hear from these various components of our process. We want to make this a very inclusive process. I believe it was Mr. O'Quinn that spoke a minute ago. Having been through this with our board before, I think our board genuinely believes that the most important task they have, among many important tasks, is the selection of a campus president. And that inclusive participation of people like you here today and others as we go through the process reinforces the importance, but more importantly, helps our board make the decisions that make the right decisions for the university. I would ask the members of our committee if there are any questions about the institutional review process, especially those that are new and not been through this with us before. John, Ryan, anyone? Okay. If you would look at tab 6 in your material, there is a timeline. And part of what we need to do today is establish our timeline. I think we all know that a timeline is tentative. It's a moving target, but it gives us a basis for operations over the next few months. Of course, the first thing in that timeline is the appointment of the committee, and Mr. Seville has completed that. and then today is our inaugural meeting. In just a moment, we'll talk about an advertisement for publications, and we'll hope to get that out in the next few days. We have suggested in that timeline a preferred date of November the 7th for nominations and applications from interested candidates. Our process is always open, but you have to have a point where you indicate that if you're really interested in being considered, and our suggested date is November the 7th. We have targeted November 14, 15, or 16, and that's a little bit of a moving target as we see what our applicant pool looks like, where we will be back here on this campus, and the search committee will continue their review of applicant materials and select that pool of what we call semifinalists to come back for interviews. The timeline also calls for those interviews to be conducted in that period of around November 30th to December the 2nd here on the UNO campus. And then December the 8th and 9th, at least a minimum of 2 of those semifinalists will be presented to the full board and interviewed by our board in Baton Rouge. And at that same time, 8th and 9th, hopefully we'll select a president or a new president or a first president. I thought about that. It will be the first president. Some of you may be wondering, how we're doing this since UNO is not really in our system. We have had discussions with the Southern Association leadership. They know that we have begun the process, and as you know, LSU had a committee, and they had, on signature of the legislation, disbanded their search committee. We're fortunate to have 2 members of our committee that were involved, Mr. Solomon and Ms. Hess, with that process. We think this is a rather aggressive schedule, but after having talked with many, many people, including our board chair and vice chair and others, we think it is very, very important to stabilize the leadership here at UNO. And so we're going to move with this schedule unless the committee members recommend some alterations. We know it can be modified along the way, and we hope that by that December 8 or 9, after SACS approves the transfer formally the week before, that we'll be able to announce the first president at the University of New Orleans. Mr. Seville, we probably need an approval of that timeline. Is anybody on the committee that has any questions about our process or tentative timelines? Mr. Seville, we need a motion.
Mr. Solomon, does that look pretty good to you?
Yes, sir.
The chair would appreciate a motion from you.
Make a motion to accept the timeline presented in our package.
Do I have a second? Steve Ash seconds. Any discussion? Any objections? Any discussion from the audience? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Okay, committee members, I would ask you to go to tab 7 in your folder, and I'm attempting to, but not seeming to get there.
Dr. Moffitt?
Yes.
I just wanted to ask a question. The timeline that we just approved will be on our website for the
Yes.
public to follow as we go along.
Right.
right?
All the materials that we've covered and our timeline, our calendar, and we'll talk more about the website in just a few minutes. And the website's also open for you to have ongoing dialogue with us about the process, about candidates, what you think is important in the process, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, Mr. O'Quinn, but thank you for that.